My daughter sat at a table full of kids eating chicken tenders and macaroni. In front of her was a paper plate with 6 saltine crackers and a cup of tap water. I watched from across the reception hall as every other child at that table picked up their forks and started eating. Maisie just sat there, her little hands in her lap, staring down at those crackers like she was trying to figure out what she did wrong. She was 8 years old. She was wearing the lavender flower girl dress we had picked out together 3 months earlier. She had walked down that aisle and thrown rose petals for her uncle just 2 hours before. And now she was sitting in a room full of 200 people, watching everyone eat while she got nothing but saltines and tap water. My name is Corinne Belford. I am 34 years old and I work as a pediatric nurse at a children's hospital in Columbus, Ohio. I have spent my career caring for sick kids, advocating for them, making sure their needs are met even when their own parents are too exhausted or overwhelmed to fight. But that night, at my own brother's wedding reception, I failed to protect the one child who matters most to me. The man getting married was my younger brother, Trent. He is 29, 5 years younger than me, and for most of our lives, he was my best friend. We grew up in the same small house, shared the same inside jokes, and promised each other that no matter what happened, we would always have each other's backs. When my marriage fell apart 2 years ago, Trent was the one who showed up at my apartment with moving boxes and pizza. He helped me pack my entire life into a U-Haul and never once made me feel like a failure. He adored Maisie. Every Sunday, he would take her out for ice cream. She called him her favorite uncle, even though he was her only uncle. They had a special handshake that took them 3 months to perfect. When Trent got engaged, Maisie cried happy tears and asked if she could be the flower girl. He said yes before his fiancée could even respond. His fiancée, Waverly Odom. 27 years old, event coordinator by profession, and the woman who planned every single detail of that 200-person wedding. The flowers, the seating arrangements, the menu, the playlist, the napkin folds. Nothing happened at that reception without her approval. And that is how I knew, the moment I saw those crackers on my daughter's plate, that it was not an accident. Maisie has food allergies, dairy and gluten. It is not life-threatening, but it is serious enough that eating the wrong thing means stomach cramps, headaches, and hours of misery. I had called Waverly 6 months before the wedding to make sure the caterer knew. I sent a follow-up email 4 months out. I mentioned it again at the bridal shower. Every single time, Waverly assured me it was handled. "Corinne, I am coordinating a 200-person wedding," she said during that phone call, her voice dripping with the kind of sweetness that has a sharp edge underneath. "I think I can manage one little girl's plate." I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to believe her because the alternative meant admitting that my brother was about to marry someone who would deliberately exclude an 8-year-old child. I walked across that reception hall, past the white linen tables and the centerpieces full of peonies, and I found the coordinator. Her name was Denise. She was holding a clipboard and directing servers toward the buffet station. "Excuse me," I said, keeping my voice calm even though my heart was pounding. My daughter was supposed to have a special meal for her allergies. She just received crackers and water. Denise looked at me with polite confusion. "What is the child's name?" "Maisie Belford." She flipped through pages on her clipboard, scanning the meal list. Then she stopped. Her expression changed. She looked uncomfortable, like she had just stumbled into something she wanted no part of. "I am sorry, ma'am. She is not on the meal list." "That is not possible. I spoke to the bride personally." Denise hesitated. Then she pulled out a seating chart and showed it to me. There was Maisie's name written in a little box at the kids' table, and next to it, in handwriting I recognized immediately, was a note. Waverly's handwriting. It said, "Allergy not real. Attention seeker. Crackers and water only. Do not upgrade under any circumstances." I read those words 3 times. I felt my hands start to shake. I felt the blood rush to my face and my chest tighten, like someone had wrapped a belt around my ribs and pulled. She did this on purpose. She called my daughter a liar. She made sure that Maisie would sit in front of everyone at that wedding and be humiliated. I looked across the room at Waverly, standing in her white gown, laughing with her bridesmaids, completely unaware that I had just seen exactly who she really was. I looked at my brother spinning on the dance floor with our mother, so happy he could barely stop smiling. And then I looked at Maisie, My little girl sitting alone at that kid's table nibbling on a cracker because she did not want to make a fuss. In that moment, I had a choice. I could march across that dance floor, grab the microphone, and tell every single person in that room what kind of woman Trent had just married. I could flip a table. I could scream. I could make sure Waverly's perfect wedding became a disaster she would never forget. But I did not do any of those things. Instead, I asked Denise one simple question. "Can I take a photo of this seating chart for my records?" She nodded. I pulled out my phone, made sure Waverly's handwritten note was perfectly visible, and took the picture. I did not cause a scene that night. I did not say a single word to Waverly. I smiled for photos. I clapped during the speeches. I hugged my brother and told him I was happy for him, but that photo never left my phone. And what I did with it 3 days later did not just ruin their honeymoon. It ended their marriage before it even started, destroyed Waverly's reputation, and exposed a secret that my brother never saw coming. This is the story of how 6 saltine crackers and a cup of water brought down an entire wedding. To understand why that seating chart broke something inside me, you need to understand what my brother and I used to be. Trent and I grew up in a 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb outside Columbus. Our father, Holt, worked as a regional manager for a manufacturing company. Our mother, Gail, was a school secretary for 30 years before she retired. We were not wealthy, but we were comfortable. More importantly, we were close. Trent was 5 years younger than me, which meant I spent most of my childhood looking out for him. I walked him to school. I helped him with his homework. When he got picked on in middle school for being small, I was the one who showed up at the bus stop and made it clear that messing with my brother meant dealing with me. We had this unspoken rule between us. No matter what happened, no matter how bad things got, we would always protect each other. That rule held for almost 30 years. When I got married at 24, Trent gave a toast at my reception that made everyone cry. He talked about how I had been more than a sister to him. I had been his defender, his teacher, his best friend. He said he hoped my husband understood how lucky he was. My husband did not understand. That marriage lasted 6 years before he decided he wanted a different life, one that did not include me or our daughter. I came home one evening to find a note on the kitchen counter and half the furniture missing. He had cleared out our savings account and left me with a stack of bills and a 5-year-old who kept asking where Daddy went. Trent drove 4 hours that night to be with me. He sat on my empty living room floor and let me cry until I had nothing left. Then he helped me pick up the pieces. He co-signed the lease on my new apartment. He took Maisie to the park every weekend so I could work extra shifts at the hospital. He never once made me feel like a burden. That was the brother I knew, the one who showed up when it mattered. Then he met Waverly. She came into his life 3 years ago. They met at a networking event downtown, and Trent was smitten from the first conversation. Waverly was beautiful in that polished, put-together way that made you feel underdressed just standing next to her. She had a job she was proud of, apartment decorated like a magazine spread, and a confidence that filled every room she walked into. At first, I was happy for him. Trent deserved someone who made him feel special. But the longer Waverly was around, the more I noticed things that unsettled me. She never asked about Maisie, not once. When we had family dinners and Maisie was there, Waverly would talk over her or ignore her completely. If Maisie tried to show her a drawing or tell her about school, Waverly would give a tight smile and change the subject. Then came the comments about the allergies. The first time I brought safe snacks to a family barbecue, Waverly raised an eyebrow and said, "Must be exhausting catering to all that." I laughed it off, thinking she just did not understand. But the comments kept coming. At Thanksgiving, when my mother made a separate dish for Maisie, Waverly muttered under her breath, "Some kids just need to learn they are not the center of the universe." I told myself I was being oversensitive. My mother told me to give Waverly time, that she was not used to being around children. My father said nothing, but I caught him watching Waverly sometimes with a look I could not quite read. Trent changed too. He stopped coming to Sunday ice cream. He started canceling plans at the last minute, always with some excuse about Waverly needing him for wedding preparations. When I tried to talk to him about my concerns, he shut me down. "You just do not like her, because she is different from us," he said one afternoon, and the words stung more than I expected. "Waverly is going to be my wife, Corinne. I need you to accept that." So I tried. I swallowed my doubts and told myself that loving my brother meant supporting his choices, even if I did not fully understand them. The morning of the wedding, I woke up determined to make it a good day. I helped Maisie into her flower girl dress and braided her hair with little white ribbons. She was so excited she could barely hold still. "Do you think Uncle Trent will cry when he sees me?" she asked, spinning in front of the mirror. "I think he is going to cry the moment you start walking down that aisle," I said, and I meant it. We drove to the venue together, my parents in the front seat, Maisie bouncing beside me in the back. The sun was shining. The barn venue looked beautiful, and for one brief moment, I let myself believe that everything would be fine. I had no idea what was waiting for us at that reception. The ceremony was everything a wedding should be. The barn venue had been transformed into something out of a bridal magazine. White drapes hung from the rafters, twinkle lights wrapped around every wooden beam, and arrangements of peonies and roses lined the aisle. 200 guests filled the rows of chairs, fanning themselves with programs and whispering about how beautiful everything looked. Maisie walked down that aisle like she had been practicing her whole life. She scattered rose petals with careful precision, her lavender dress swishing with every step. When she reached the front, she turned and gave me the biggest smile I had ever seen. I felt tears prick my eyes, the good kind, the kind that come when you watch your child have a perfect moment. Trent cried when he saw Waverly walking toward him. His hands shook as he reached for hers. When they exchanged vows, his voice cracked on. The words, "I promise to love you for the rest of my life." I looked at my mother, who was dabbing her eyes with a tissue, and my father, who had his arm around her shoulders. For those 20 minutes, we were a family celebrating something beautiful. I wanted so badly for that feeling to last. The reception began immediately after the ceremony. Guests moved from the outdoor seating area into the main barn, where round tables draped in white linen filled the space. A live band played soft jazz in the corner. Servers circulated with trays of champagne and appetizers. I found our family table near the front and helped my parents get settled. Then I walked Maisie over to the kids' table near the back of the room. There were 8 children seated there, ranging from about 5 to 10 years old. Place cards marked each seat, and Maisie found hers between 2 little girls she did not know. "You okay here, sweetheart?" I asked, smoothing down her hair. "I am fine, Mommy. Go have fun." I kissed the top of her head and walked back to the adult table, glancing over my shoulder one more time to make sure she was comfortable. She was already chatting with the girl next to her, and I felt a wave of relief. Maybe I had worried for nothing. Maybe today would be the fresh start I had been hoping for. 20 minutes later, the servers began bringing out the kids' meals. I watched from across the room as plates were set down in front of each child. Chicken tenders shaped like dinosaurs, macaroni and cheese in little ceramic bowls, fruit cups with strawberries and grapes. The children picked up their forks and started eating, laughing and talking with their mouths full the way kids do. Then I saw Maisie's face. She was not eating. She was not laughing. She was sitting perfectly still, staring down at her plate with an expression I recognized immediately. It was the same expression she had worn the day her father left, confusion mixed with hurt, the look of a child trying to understand why something bad was happening to her. I stood up from my chair and walked toward the kids' table, my heart beating faster with every step. When I reached Maisie, I looked down at what was in front of her, a paper plate. Not a real plate like everyone else had. A flimsy white paper plate with 6 saltine crackers arranged in a row. Next to it was a small plastic cup filled with tap water. "Maisie," I said softly, kneeling beside her chair, "what happened to your food?" She looked up at me with watery eyes. "This is what they gave me, Mommy." "Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart, you did nothing wrong. There must be a mistake." But even as I said the words, something cold settled in my stomach. I had confirmed Maisie's meal 3 times. I had spoken to Waverly directly. There was no reason for my daughter to be sitting in front of crackers and water unless someone had made sure it happened. I squeezed Maisie's hand and told her I would be right back. Then I walked toward the catering station, scanning the room for someone in charge. I found Denise standing near the kitchen entrance, clipboard in hand, directing servers with quiet efficiency. "Excuse me," I said, and I was proud of how steady my voice sounded. My daughter was supposed to have a special meal due to food allergies. She just received crackers and water. Denise turned to me with a polite, professional expression. Of course. Let me check. What is the child's name? Maisie Belford. She flipped through pages on her clipboard, running her finger down a list of names. I watched her face change. The politeness faded into something uncomfortable, almost apologetic. I am sorry, ma'am. She is not on the meal accommodation list. That is impossible. I spoke to the bride about this months ago. Denise hesitated. She looked around as if making sure no one was watching, then pulled out a large seating chart from behind her clipboard. She pointed to a small box with Maisie's name written inside. "This is what I was given," she said quietly. I looked at the chart. Next to my daughter's name, in handwriting I knew as well as my own, was a note written in blue ink. Waverly's handwriting. The words burned into my memory the moment I read them. Allergy not real. Attention seeker. Crackers and water only. Do not upgrade under any circumstances. I read it again and again. My hands trembled. My vision blurred at the edges. She had done this on purpose. She had deliberately humiliated my child in front of 200 people, and she had put it in writing. I stood there holding that seating chart, and everything inside me wanted to explode. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep my grip on the paper. My jaw was clenched so tight, my teeth ached. Every protective instinct I had was screaming at me to march across that dance floor, grab Waverly by her perfectly curled hair, and drag her in front of every guest so they could see exactly what kind of person she really was. I could picture it so clearly, the gasps, the chaos, the look on her face when she realized her perfect wedding had just become a disaster. I wanted her to feel even a fraction of the humiliation she had inflicted on my daughter. But then I looked across the room at Maisie. She was still sitting at that kid's table, nibbling on a cracker, trying so hard to be invisible. The other children were laughing and eating, completely unaware that the little girl beside them had been singled out and shamed. Maisie kept her head down, her shoulders hunched, making herself as small as possible. If I caused a scene, every eye in that room would turn to her. She would become the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. People would whisper about her for years. The girl whose mother lost her mind at a wedding, the girl with the fake allergies. Whatever story Waverly spun would follow Maisie long after this night ended. I could not do that to her. I would not let Waverly turn my daughter into a spectacle. So I made a different choice. I took a slow breath and loosened my grip on the seating chart. I looked at Denise, who was watching me with nervous eyes, clearly bracing herself for whatever came next. "Can I take a photo of this for my records?" I asked. My voice came out calm, almost pleasant, and I surprised myself with how steady it sounded. Denise blinked. She had obviously expected yelling, accusations, demands to speak with someone in charge. A polite request for a photograph was not what she had prepared for. "I suppose that would be fine," she said cautiously. I pulled out my phone and held it over the seating chart. I made sure Waverly's handwritten note was perfectly centered in the frame. I took 3 photos from different angles, checking each one to confirm the words were clearly legible. Then I handed the chart back to Denise. "Thank you," I said. "Now, is there any way the kitchen could prepare something simple for my daughter? Plain grilled chicken and steamed vegetables, nothing with dairy or gluten." Denise nodded quickly, clearly relieved that I was not making a scene. "I will see what I can do. Give me 10 minutes. I thanked her again and walked back to the kids' table. I pulled up a chair beside Maisie and sat down, putting my arm around her shoulders. "Hey, sweetheart, good news. They are making you a special plate right now. It is going to be way better than what everyone else got." Maisie looked up at me, and I could see the questions in her eyes. She knew something was wrong. Kids always know more than we think they do. "Why did I get crackers, Mommy?" I had to think fast. I was not going to lie to her, but I was also not going to burden her with the full truth. Not tonight. Not when she was supposed to be celebrating. "There was a mix-up with the food orders," I said, smoothing her hair back from her face. "It happens sometimes at big parties, but they are fixing it right now, okay? You did nothing wrong." She studied my face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, Mommy." 10 minutes later, a server appeared with a real plate of grilled chicken and steamed broccoli. Maisie's face lit up, and she dug in like she had not eaten in days. I sat with her through the entire meal, ignoring the speeches and the first dance and the cake cutting happening across the room. Later that evening, after Maisie had finished eating and joined the other kids on the dance floor, I found my father standing alone near the bar. He was nursing a glass of whiskey and watching Trent spin Waverly around to some slow song. "Dad," I said quietly, "I need to talk to you." He turned to look at me, and something in my expression must have alarmed him. He set down his drink immediately. "What happened?" "Not here, not tonight, but tomorrow morning I need you and Mom to come to my apartment. There is something I have to show you." "Corinne, you are scaring me. Just tell me." I shook my head. "If I tell you now, you will not be able to hide it. Trent will know something is wrong. I need you to trust me and wait until tomorrow." My father searched my face for a long moment. We had always understood each other, he and I. He knew I was not the dramatic type. He knew I would not ask him to wait unless it was serious. "First thing tomorrow," he said finally. "I will be there." I nodded and squeezed his hand. Then I walked back to the reception, plastered a smile on my face, and spent the rest of the night pretending everything was fine. I hugged Trent before he and Waverly left for their honeymoon. I told him I was happy for him. I waved as their car pulled away, tin cans rattling behind it. "Just married," painted on the back window. And the whole time, that photo sat in my phone like a ticking bomb. My parents arrived at my apartment at 8 the next morning. I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those words on the seating chart. Allergy not real. Attention seeker. I kept replaying the image of Maisie sitting alone with her crackers, trying not to cry while everyone around her enjoyed a real meal. Maisie was still asleep in her room when my parents knocked. I let them in and led them to the kitchen table. My mother looked worried. My father looked like he was bracing for bad news. "Corinne, what is going on?" my mother asked. "You've been acting strange since last night." I did not say anything. I just pulled out my phone, opened the photo, and set it on the table between them. "Read that," I said. My father picked up the phone first. I watched his face as his eyes moved across the screen. I saw the exact moment he reached the handwritten note. His jaw tightened. The color drained from his cheeks. When he looked up at me, there was something in his eyes I had never seen before. Cold, quiet fury. "What is this?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. "That is the seating chart from the reception. That note next to Maisie's name is in Waverly's handwriting. She made sure my daughter got crackers and water instead of a real meal. She called her an attention seeker. She did it on purpose." My mother took the phone from my father's hands. She read the note once, then again, then a third time. Her lips pressed together so tightly they turned white. "She wrote this about Maisie?" my mother whispered. "About an 8-year-old child?" "Yes, Mom, she deliberately humiliated your granddaughter at her own uncle's wedding." The kitchen went silent. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall and the distant sound of birds outside the window. My parents looked at each other, having one of those wordless conversations that couples develop after 40 years of marriage. Then my father stood up. "Where are you going?" my mother asked. "To my office. I need to make some phone calls." He walked out of the kitchen, and I heard his footsteps heading down the hall. My mother and I sat in silence until he returned. 15 minutes later, his face was set like stone. "I just called the bank," he said. "The $40,000 I gave them for the wedding included a $10,000 honeymoon fund that was supposed to transfer to their joint account this morning. I stopped it." "Holt," my mother started. "No, Gail, I will not fund a single dollar for a woman who treats our granddaughter like dirt. That money was a gift for my son and his wife. Waverly is not the wife I thought she was." He was not finished. He sat back down at the table and picked up his own phone. "I am sending this photo to Waverly's parents." My mother gasped. "You cannot do that. It will cause a war." "Good," my father said. "They should know who their daughter really is." He typed out a message, attached the photo, and hit send before anyone could stop him. The text was simple and devastating. "This is the seating chart from last night's reception. Your daughter wrote that note about our 8-year-old granddaughter. I thought you should see the kind of person she really is." The fallout was immediate. Within 2 hours, Waverly's mother called our house. I was not there for the conversation, but my mother told me about it later. Waverly's mother was horrified and embarrassed. She had seen the handwriting. She knew it was authentic. She could not defend what her daughter had done, and she did not try. By the end of the day, the photo had spread through both families. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone saw it. Everyone read those words. The carefully constructed image Waverly had built for herself began to crumble. 3 days into the honeymoon, my phone rang. It was Trent. His voice sounded hollow, like someone had reached inside him and scooped out everything that made him who he was. "Is it true?" he asked. "Did Waverly really write that about Maisie?" "Yes, Trent. I have the photo. Denise confirmed everything. Your wife called your 8-year-old niece an attention seeker and made sure she got crackers while every other child ate a real meal." Silence stretched across the line. I could hear waves in the background. He was probably standing on some beautiful beach in Cancun, surrounded by paradise, and his whole world was falling apart. "I need to see it," he finally said. "Send me the photo." I sent it. I waited. 10 minutes later, he called back. "We are coming home early," he said. "I need to see that chart in person. I need to talk to Denise myself." "Trent, I am so sorry." "Do not apologize. You are not the one who did this." When he got home, he confronted Waverly. She tried everything. She said I had edited the photo. She said Denise was lying. She said the whole family was conspiring against her because they had never accepted her. But Trent had already called the venue. He had already spoken to Denise. He had already seen the original seating chart with his own eyes. There was no lie big enough to bury the truth. 3 weeks after the wedding, Trent filed for an annulment. He came to my apartment the night he made the decision. Maisie was already in bed, and he sat at my kitchen table with his head in his hands, looking like a man who had aged 10 years in 21 days. "I keep thinking about all the signs I missed," he said. "The little comments she made about Maisie, the way she rolled her eyes whenever you brought up the allergies. I told myself she just was not used to kids. I told myself she would warm up eventually." He looked up at me, and his eyes were red. "She was never going to warm up, was she?" "No," I said quietly. "I do not think she was." Trent told me what happened when he confronted her in Cancun. At first, Waverly denied everything. She cried and said I had manipulated the photo, that I had always hated her, that I was jealous of their happiness. When that did not work, she switched tactics. She said Maisie's allergies were exaggerated, that I was raising a spoiled child who needed to learn she was not special. That was the moment Trent knew. "She looked me right in the eyes and said an 8-year-old deserved to be taught a lesson," he told me, and she did not even flinch. There was no remorse, no guilt, nothing. It was like she genuinely believed she had done the right thing. He said he looked at her standing there in that hotel room, the woman he had married 4 days earlier, and realized he did not know her at all. The person he thought he loved had never existed. She was a mask, and the seating chart had ripped it off. The annulment went through faster than anyone expected. Waverly did not contest it. I think she knew that fighting would only make things worse, that the photo had already destroyed her reputation, and dragging it through court would finish the job. Her own family turned against her. Her sister, who had been her maid of honor, stopped speaking to her entirely. Her mother called my mother to apologize 3 separate times. Word spread through her professional network, too. An event coordinator who would deliberately humiliate a child at a wedding was not someone vendors wanted to work with. Within 2 months, she lost her job and moved to another state. I wish I could say I felt satisfied. Part of me did. But mostly, I just felt tired and sad. Sad for Trent, who had to rebuild his life after discovering his wife was capable of cruelty he never imagined. Sad for my parents, who had watched their son's happiness shatter. Sad for Maisie, who still sometimes asked why Aunt Waverly did not like her. That was the hardest conversation I ever had with my daughter. I sat her down a few weeks after everything settled and tried to explain in terms an 8-year-old could understand. "Sometimes people do mean things," I told her, "not because of anything you did, but because of something broken inside them. What happened at Uncle Trent's wedding was not your fault. It was never your fault." Maisie thought about that for a moment. Then she asked, "Is Uncle Trent going to be okay?" "Yes, sweetheart, he is going to be just fine, and he loves you very much." Trent started coming around again after the annulment was finalized. Sunday ice cream dates resumed. He and Maisie rebuilt their special handshake from scratch because she decided the old one had bad memories attached to it. The first time I saw them laughing together again, I cried in the kitchen where they could not see me. My brother apologized to me more times than I could count. He said he should have listened to me. He said he should have seen the signs. He said he would spend the rest of his life making it up to Maisie. I told him the same thing every time. You did not know. None of us really knew. What matters is what you do now. I learned something important through all of this. For most of my life, I had been the peacekeeper. I smoothed things over. I bit my tongue. I told myself that keeping the family happy was more important than standing up for what was right. But silence is not peace. Silence is permission. When someone hurts your child and you say nothing, you are telling them it is acceptable to do it again. You are teaching your child that their pain does not matter enough to fight for. I did not flip a table at that wedding. I did not grab a microphone and expose Waverly in front of 200 people. But I also did not let it go. I documented the truth. I waited for the right moment, and I let that truth speak for itself. Sometimes the quietest response is the most powerful one. Waverly thought crackers and water would put my daughter in her place. She thought she could humiliate an 8-year-old girl and get away with it because no one would make a fuss at her perfect wedding. She was wrong. That seating chart did not just end her marriage. It revealed who she really was to everyone who mattered. And in the end, that was a punishment far worse than any scene I could have caused. Maisie is doing great now. She's 9 years old, thriving in school, and has zero doubt that her mother will always fight for her. Tren is healing. My parents are closer than ever, and our family learned that protecting each other means telling the truth, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. If you are watching this and you have ever stayed silent to keep the peace, I want you to know something. Your voice matters. Your child's dignity matters, and sometimes a single photograph can change everything. Thank you for watching this story all the way to the end. If it moved you, if it made you think, or if you know someone who needs to hear this message, please share this video with them. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done in my situation. I read every single comment and I would love to hear your thoughts. If you are new to this channel, hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you never miss another story. We share real stories about real people standing up for themselves and the ones they love. Until next time, remember this: the truth always finds a way, and sometimes all it takes is one photograph.